Hey everybody, Charles for HumbleMechanic.com. Today, I'm going to be taking your questions on TD1 tuning, raised toe alignments, DSG services, and more. This is episode 133 of the Humble Mechanic Podcast. All right, so as you guys can see, I am not in the regular studio today. I'm actually in Las Vegas for the Cobalt 400. In addition to seeing the race tomorrow, we're going to be learning a little bit more about Pennzoil oil. Pretty excited about that. Be sure to keep your eyes peeled for some cool stuff coming about Pennzoil oil, which, as you guys know, is the oil that I use in my own cars anyway, so it'll be great to be able to get some behind-the-scenes race stuff, as well as a little bit more in-depth Pennzoil knowledge. And not to mention, you guys get to see a super creepy backdrop of the hotel room that I'm in while I take your questions. So let's jump right into the questions. I have a 2012 GTI that is affected by the 24AX software update for the 2.0 TSI engines. In California, for registration purposes, I need to get the ECU updated. My vehicle is tuned and I'm looking for an episode regarding TD1 or being flagged by Volkswagen USA, and I couldn't find anything. I know you said unless it is warranty work, you are diagnosing, you use VAGCOM most of the time, so no risk of TD1. Could you explain when there is a risk for someone being flagged and if someone should flash back to stock before getting their ECM updated on their vehicle? Does a tech just have to plug in the VW specific scan tool to be flagged, or do they specifically have to be looking for something in order to get flagged? So the way now, to be fair, Josh, great question, and I have never had the opportunity to make a car be flagged TD1. I've seen a few cars flag TD1. Now, for those of you that don't know what TD1 is, that basically is an indicating code from Volkswagen that says, hey, this car has been modified. So it's sort of like a little alert that says, hey, something's been modified on this car, so that we at the dealership level know. If a car's modified in California, comes to North Carolina, it's flagged, it's tuned, we know that something's been done to it. The way I understand this happens is a dealership or a technician or a warranty clerk or service manager or whatever has to follow a protocol in order to get this flagged. So to me, that means when you plug the scan tool in, it doesn't automatically flag it. That means someone has to specifically go out to make sure this car gets flagged as tuned. I've never done that. Even on tuned cars that I've worked on, I've never done, because for the most part, there's really no value in it for me going through all these hoops and all this stuff in order to get someone's car flagged. Odds are, if you go in and get your ECM tuned, odds are, this is not a guarantee, this is how it's going to happen. Nothing will happen. They'll tune your car, they'll install the new 24AX software, you go get your registration, and I think for most part, like APR and Unitronic will retune your car for $200, whatever it costs. That's probably what I would do. Now, once the update's been done, it's satisfied with the state of California, it's satisfied with Volkswagen, you're kind of back to do whatever you want to do with it. If it were me, I would not get it flashed back to stock. I've seen this exact update wipe tunes and put it back to stock. I would just let it go, let it get updated, and then if you want to retune your car, and don't worry necessarily about it being flagged as TD1, because I've never seen someone come in for a software update and then, because of that, the car get flagged as TD1. All right, next one comes from Jeff. Jeff's got two questions. First one, question on a Mark 6 GTI DSG fluid change technique. And question 2 is on subframe shiftings. Both awesome questions that I really do get a lot. So thanks for sending them, Jeff. Charles, after seeing your video with Shop DAP on how to change the DSG fluid, I was curious why you can't fill the transmission with 5 quarts through the top where the filter goes. Is this possible, or is it definitely no way to do this? So first up on the DSG, you can absolutely do it that way. It just takes forever. One thing that I think I sort of forget sometimes is that every job that I do at the dealership is built on being efficient at that job. Now, it's going to be a considerably amount faster job for me if I do the filter, then pump the fluid in from the bottom rather than try and get it in through the top. If it saves me 5 minutes on a job, it's worth the extra effort. So I always think of things in that way. Plus, that's how the repair manual says to do it. Now, can you do it from the top? Absolutely. It just takes a really long time. But for a lot of people, that may actually be a better way to do it rather than having to gravity feed, holding a bottle up or whatever, like you saw in the video there with Shop DAP, holding the bottle up, letting gravity basically pump the fluid into the transmission. So you can absolutely do it. It does just take a little bit longer. Question 2, have you heard of Mark 6 GTI, and I'm sure other models have subframe shifting issues? There are companies that sell upgraded subframe bolts that are supposed to minimize shifting from this happening. Is this a real concern or an unnecessary upgrade? Jeff, this is a great question too. So yes, ever since the Mark V generation, so Mark V and B6 platform cars, subframe shifting has been a concern. And this could be due to the bolts not being replaced when the subframe gets dropped. Early on, it was improper torque on the subframe bolts. They just plain weren't tight enough. Or, a number of other things. You could hit something that could loosen the bolt a little bit, and then when you really romp on it or really brake hard on it, it'll shift the subframe. There are companies that sell these kits. Personally, I've never installed one. It seems like a very legitimate kit. If I were going to be modifying a Mark V or Mark 6 or Mark 7 if they haven't for that, I would definitely put these little tiny spacers and new bolts in it to reduce or eliminate the shifting of the subframe. Typically, you can see it on the subframe. You can see witness marks around where the bolt is and then where the bolt was if you look underneath. The good thing about that soft aluminum is it provides witness marks very, very easily. So I don't think it's an unnecessary upgrade. I don't know that it would be my first upgrade. I think I might do some other things, but if you're experiencing the issue, then I would definitely do the upgrade. Also, for the most part, replacing those subframe bolts, because they are torque to yield bolts, will eliminate or at least alleviate a lot of that shifting of the subframe. All right, next one comes from Price. Hey Charles, thanks for all you do to help us. I have a 2007 GTI. My key on Friday didn't want to start the car. Finally, I got it started. Next day, hard to turn but would start and turn off. The next day, stuck in the on position and won't stop the engine and will not come out of the ignition. I want to do it myself. I have the steering wheel off. Just want your opinion of, do you think it's the tumbler or the lock switch? So I've seen this a bunch on Mark V, Mark 6, Mark 4 Beetles did it a lot too. And it really all depends. If you get yourself in that kind of situation, you're going to need to get the lock cylinder housing out anyway. So it's got shear bolts. You're going to have to drill them out, or I use a tiny chisel and a hammer and kind of tap and walk the bolts around. There's power extractors that don't work very well. Basically, it's just a sort of a test of patience, or you drill them out, or whatever the method you're going to use to get these shear bolts out. What shear bolts are bolts that have a little fitting on the top of them that once they're torqued properly, the fitting breaks off and you basically have no way to remove them with something like a socket or an Allen. You have to grind them out, chisel them out, whatever. And of course, they have shields on them that protect them. So if the bolt head is here, there's a shield on it that sits about like this, which makes them super fun to get out. You're going to need to get that out. And then what I've done in the past is I've actually drilled where the little spring thing is inside the lock cylinder housing in order to push it down. It's a super pain in the butt, but I honestly think you're going to do the housing anyway, right? So you're going to do the portion with the electrical switch in it no matter what. That's almost always, like 99.5% of the time, what fails. When it comes to the portion where the key goes in, this really all depends. Sometimes you don't have to replace it. Sometimes it's easier to replace. Sometimes it's cheaper for a customer to replace because then they don't have to pay me to cut open the housing in order to extract that key portion. So if you find the little tiny hole where normally you would put a paper clip in to lock the tab in, you can sort of follow that back and get an idea of where exactly that little spring clip is. You can try cutting it open. We've had to do all kinds of stuff in order to get these key cylinders out of the housings. And again, sometimes it's just actually cheaper and easier to just plain put a new one in. But the other side of it is you still got to get your key out. So not a super easy job. Again, it's a test of patience through the whole entire thing. Wouldn't be surprised if you end up having to cut the housing open. Just be really careful because you don't want to damage the lock cylinder portion of it. All right, got time for one more. This one comes from William. William, I've been meaning to answer this question for quite some time, so I'm glad I'm finally getting to it for you. And his question is, how do I get a raised toe alignment on my A4? I know this question so well, so I didn't even have to read it off the computer. All right, so what a raised toe alignment is, it applies specifically to the B5, the B5.5 Passat, and then a lot of different generations of Audi A4s and A6s and probably the A8, because I'm pretty sure the Phaeton had this adjustment as well. The front suspension on those vehicles, right? Let's use a B5.5 Passat just because it's easy and it's the car I'm most familiar with. it has a 4-link front suspension. So there's a ton of links in the front suspension, which is one of the reasons that car drives really, really well. The negative side of that is there's a lot of components that can wear and fail, so we have more maintenance to do. In addition to having more maintenance to do, we have another adjustment that we need to do for an alignment. So let's say we replace a suspension component. We'll use tie rods because it's the easiest one to understand. On any other vehicle, when you do a tie rod replacement, you're going to do an alignment. And you're going to do all the other adjustments too, but you're going to at least do front toe. So if these are the tires, we're going to talk about front toe. We're going to look at if we turn the tires in, we have a toe in condition. If we turn the tires out, we have a toe out condition, this being the front of the vehicle. The Passat and the A4s and the other cars I talked about have another adjustment. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the car on the alignment rack, we're going to take all our measurements, and we're going to set the rough front toe. So if we put tie rods on it and they're all squirrely and the tires are pointed out like this, we're going to adjust the tie rods and we're going to bring the tires fairly straight. Next thing we do is we raise the vehicle up off the ground or off the alignment rack, and we take a jig and we put a jig underneath the car. Then we set the car down on the jig. What this does is this puts the suspension in a partially loaded condition. So if the wheel gap is normally like this on a Passat, it takes it to about like that. Plenty of room to get your hand in there and gain access to the tie rod. This raises the vehicle up. This becomes our raised toe adjustment. So all tie rods adjust in and out, and that's what sets your toe in and out. But these tie rods have another adjustment. These tie rods actually adjust up and down in the knuckle. They have a screw on the top that if you tighten the screw, it pulls the tie rod up further. If you loosen the screw and sort of tap it down, it pushes it down away from the knuckle. And that sets the raised toe. Get it? Raised, the vehicle's raised, toe adjustment. This adjustment is meant to reduce or eliminate bump steer primarily on that generation car. And you set that and then you drop the, lift the car back up, take the jig out, drop the car back down, and we go through our alignment again, make sure everything's perfect, test drive the vehicle as we always do, and you should have a perfectly driving Passat or A4. But to William's question, how do we make sure this happens? Well, first thing I would do is I would call a Volkswagen or an Audi dealership and ask them about their alignment technician, because this is going to depend on the person doing the alignment. I've seen alignments get charged as raised toe and not done. I've seen raised toe alignments get done for free because they weren't sold that way. So you want to make sure that the technician that's going to be doing your alignment is familiar with the raised toe and understands that this is a separate adjustment from the regular front toe adjustment. Odds are you're going to be paying quite a bit more for this. We charge almost double to do the raised toe than we do just to do a standard alignment. So be prepared for that. And honestly, just talk to the alignment guy. That's going to be your best barometer of whether it's going to get done properly or not. If you say, hey man, how about doing a raised toe? And they give you that look like they have no idea what the hell you're talking about, time to move on or get somebody else to align it. If they're like, yeah man, no problem, done a million of these, got you covered, what did you do, put tie rods on it or something, we're good to go. Then we're golden, and we got a guy that we know is going to do right and do the alignment right for us. So that's what I would do. You may have to call one or two Audi or Volkswagen places. This is not the common type service today as it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, everybody did it all the time. We were putting, tie rods and upper control arms on Passats all day long. So a raised toe alignment was a really common thing. Today, it's like when you see a raised toe alignment, you're like, what is he doing? A raised toe alignment? I haven't seen that brought out in 4 months. So you want to ask the questions to the alignment tech, not just to the advisor or whoever you would normally talk to when you would call that dealership. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions or comments, post it in the comments section below. Hey, if you like the video, throw it a thumbs up on YouTube. I always appreciate that. Don't forget to check out the quick videos section that I've added to YouTube, where I'm doing more quick videos, unedited, raw, right from, like this with my iPhone. So you guys have had a really great response to that. That's working well. I'm planning on upping the number of those. Shout out to Pennzoil for bringing me to Las Vegas for the Cobalt 400. Really pumped about that tomorrow, which not sure when you guys will be seeing this video, but it's tomorrow for me. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Don't have a drink of the day. I did just have a beer of the day, which was a fantastic grapefruit sculpin.